Welcome to the Bleep Bulimia podcast with Matt Johnson about overcoming challenges and emotional scars. Hello, everyone. I am Lorianne. I am the host of Bleep Bulimia. And today I have Matt Johnson with me. He's a hypnotherapist and NLP coach, and he helps people overcome challenges and emotional scars. I love having you here today. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Okay. Everybody knows who listens. I always ask, so what inspired you to get into this?
Okay, a little bit of a long story. About 10 years ago, I got a severe brain injury. I was hiking tide pools with my kids when I slipped and landed the back of my head on a slab of solid rock. I hit so hard, my brain got smashed into the top of my skull, and the part above my eyes got twisted, damaged my optic nerve. I have no words to describe the pain that I was in. If you've ever been zapped by electricity and felt that intense, like pins and needles type feeling, that's what was going on in my head. For the next several years, I was so sensitive to light and sound. I couldn't even be in a room with the lights on. It was just too painful. I had a room I nicknamed my dungeon. I had black hefty bags taped over the windows. In prison, they call this solitary confinement. Definitely not an easy thing to get through. But going through that, I started going the medical route. I had four different neurologists. First one tells me, well, there's nothing I can do for you. And then tries me for a follow visit. I'm like, why am I going to come back if there's nothing you can do for me? I didn't say that, but just, it didn't make sense to me. So on the neuro number two, he gave me a pill that, took a little bit of the sting off. And all right, this is progress. But I was having a hard time sleeping. The pain made it hard to sleep, which made the pain worse. And I was just going to these brutal downward spirals. And I asked him, can you give me something to help me sleep? Nope, nothing I can do for you. And the typical drugs he didn't want to give me. And so on to neuro number three, right away, she's like, oh, yeah, let me give you amitriptyline. And it worked. And I was getting a consistent 7 hours, and it fixed that problem. I'm beyond grateful to all my peers. I would not be where I am without them. The only reason I tell that story is how many people would have stopped at that first one, right? But I went through, for the first year and a half, 2 years, just read every medical study out there. I tried every single harebrained treatment there is to treat a brain injury, everything from amino acids to hyperbaric oxygen. And I came to the realization that terrified me that medical science was not going to be able to heal me. And so at that time, I started looking for, all right, what else is out there? Now, I'd been a skeptic my entire life, but, desperation will do this to you. I started getting into energy medicine and things like that. And one of the first things I tried was called Reiki. And I go in for my first session. At this point, I'm going through Groupon and just check, all right, what's out there? If it's a scam, at least I'm not out much money. You know what I mean? But I go in there for my first session, and I told you I had those pins and needles in my head. The best description I can give is she kind of made them fly in formation, if that makes sense. And it took the sting away. And I'm like, whoa, I have no idea what you're doing, but please don't stop. And so at the end of that session, I asked her, can you teach me how to do that? So I spent a few days with her, got trained in Reiki. I went on to learn pranic healing, Qigong, Silva holistic faith healing, and anything I could find that, helped me. I tried to just dive in and get good at it. And I started to turn the tide. Over the next couple of years, I did a huge amount of healing, just doing the energy stuff. But I could not shake that light and sound sensitivity. It's just too painful to go out and, live my life. I could do it in small doses, but, I had the hat and dark glasses and noise canceling headphones on, and I still damaged my brain. It looked like I was going to a shooting range. But so at this point, I'm thinking, do I have permanent damage? And so I found a special type of brain scan. And MRI only looks at the tissue, which for a brain injury, unless you've got something really bad, doesn't really tell you much. I found what's called a spec scan done by Dr. Daniel Amen. He's famous in brain circles, written a ton of books, but a spec scan will actually map the electrical activity in the brain. And so I go in and, long story short, my brain was okay, but areas that were supposed to be dark were lit up like fireworks. And I was diagnosed with PTSD that day. I'd had it for decades, but never even realized it. And at this point, I realized why my injury wasn't healing. with a brain injury, the name of the game is bring the brain waves down, give your brain a chance to rest and repair itself. My PTSD was keeping me in fight or flight and sabotaging that process. So I knew if I wanted to beat the brain injury, I had to beat the PTSD first. I had no clue how I was going to do that, but I'd already known at that point. I'd seen three different therapists, tried the medications, all that. It was like a garden hose against the tide. You know what I mean? It just, I knew that wasn't my route. And so lucky for me, I was familiar with the incredible power of hypnosis. My dad tried to quit smoking for over 30 years. You know, pills, patches, gums, you name it, failed every single time until he got hypnotized. After one session, he never even craved cigarettes again. Um, yeah, it's it's that powerful. But I was also familiar with neuro linguistic programming or NLP from a guy named Tony Robbins.
Yep.
Tony famously had a woman that had 152 different personalities, and he was actually able to integrate her right there on the spot in his seminar in about 45 minutes. Uh, that's the kind of stuff that's possible with this, but not knowing that much about it, I went to NLP and hypnosis school, wound up getting quadruple certified and all that. Gave every single instructor I had the exact same question: How do you heal PTSD? They all tried to help me, but nobody really had the answer. And so I, back to the internet, and another 2.5 years, I binged, every book, every course I could find on either one. And I finally put together a protocol to heal myself. And about 6 months after that, I finally healed my brain injury. And so long-winded answer to your question, but that's how I got into stuff.
So people are going to wonder your post-traumatic stress disorder.
Hmm.
Are you open to sharing where that came from? So obviously it was in this Pandora box that opened up all of a sudden.
Yeah, yeah. Mine was childhood. And when you're dealing with childhood stuff, if I'm dealing with a soldier on a battlefield, something happened, I'm not discounting, what he went through at all, but at that point, he's pretty much an adult, right? His personality is pretty much formed. And so it's more straightforward than somebody who got it in childhood.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? And so when when you pick up those scars in childhood, it impacts your identity so much. Kids, especially 0 through 7, they go through what's called the imprinting phase, where your brain is taking in huge amounts of data, but we haven't developed what's called a critical faculty yet, which just means you can't judge anything that's coming in. And so your personality was formed before you had any kind of say in it. So if you think back to those emotional experiences that shaped you during that time, that programming is still in your subconscious, and it's still impacting you until you go in and deal with it. Now, by the time you hit 30 years old, up to 95% of all your day-to-day behaviors are driven by your subconscious mind. And the analogy I like to use is think back to the first you drove a car. Your hands were 10 and 2, and you were super focused on not hitting anything. You had to be, right? Fast forward a few years, and you got coffee in one hand, cell phone in the other. I'm kidding. Please don't do that. But,
I feel
how
the
did it
same.
become so automatic?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Most of us have had the experience of driving and realizing we haven't even been paying attention. How did you
No, you
not
get to where
crash?
you are and you go, my goodness, did I drive through red lights? Because I don't know, like green lights are automatic,
Yeah,
red
yeah,
lights are automatic.
exactly.
And because
Yeah,
you're thinking of
yeah,
other things, so you don't even remember the trip to
yeah,
wherever you were going. It's
yeah. Same, same. How did you not crash? It's
right?
because your subconscious learned how to drive, right? Through repetition. That's the process.
Oh,
Pretty cool for driving, but bad things can happen when we teach it negative emotions, limiting beliefs, bad habits, things like that. Your
mm,
subconscious is just like a computer. It works, it doesn't think. It works through whatever it's programmed with. And when you pass it things like that you don't want, that's when hypnosis and NLP really shine. You can get and actually rewrite those programs into what you want them to be, if that makes sense.
yeah. And so I just want to clarify, because I mean, my
Mhm.
listeners have gone through some of them, the bulimia is a response to childhood trauma,
Yeah, yeah,
whatever. And then the other thing too that I always bring up though is that trauma does not have to be grandiose. I mean, it doesn't mean that
right,
a parent beat you up or a parent,
right.
whatever I'm saying. or an adult hurt you or whatever. It could be snippets of small things too that add up. In particular, I think it depends on the person. Like I was incredibly sensitive. So
Hmm.
my little baby traumas, I call them that, which added up to be something else. I didn't have a bad childhood, but there was like there was discipline, there was strictness, there was sibling rivalry, there was all that. And all of those really affected me because when I look back on it, and then of course I went a year pretty well with pneumonia, and so I didn't interact
Oh,
in
wow.
kindergarten with other kids. I actually love being on my own. And I think that was part of my, because I was 6 years old. I didn't go to school from
Yeah.
6 to 7. I went a couple of times, but then I'd go back into having to stay home again, be in the room all by myself. And I wouldn't say it traumatized me or anything, but that was part of what made me who I am, my sensitivities, my being alone, being away from people. So I am what I call an introvert, an ambivert, I guess. I can be very
Hmm.
extroverted, but let me tell you, I love my time alone. But
Yeah. Yeah.
bulimia, where I'm sometimes thinking is that ambivert, so the introvert side of someone who sometimes can reflect the traumas. I don't know, I may be totally off,
Hmm.
but even the baby traumas. Um, Bulimia is very much an alone thing, and
Yeah.
it makes you
Yeah.
alone, and it almost forces you sometimes to be alone because you'd rather be with your bulimia than with your family or friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Over to you.
I personally don't look at it that way. I look at it like, yeah, you're absolutely right. I've worked with people who, it's all right. Please don't take this the wrong way. But I'm talking just strictly mental processes here, right? It's kind of like an addiction. It's you have triggers, you have that you run through, right? Um, or I've worked with people who that trigger was the house is that can do it now. You know what I mean? And when now, I'm not a doctor or diagnose, but when you have the patterns, things like that, it's like an escape. Am I right?
Mhm.
It's you're escaping that pain. It's a way to you're changing your physiology. You're literally vomiting it up, right?
Yeah.
It's Addictions are the same way. A lot of times there's some emotional stuff going on that you're trying to escape from, and it's um, it doesn't make you weak or a bad person or anything like that. It's just you found a way to temporarily relieve that pain. You know what I mean? Change your focus, get your focus off of it. Every addiction, it has one thing in common. I don't care if it's food, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is. The person with the addiction, they all play a mental movie that ends with them getting their fix. And so if you want to start to change that, what you want to do is take that mental movie and expand it. So what I do with people is I'll have them expand that movie, go 10 years in the future, 20 years in the future. How do you think that's affecting your teeth, your throat, your esophagus? See yourself down there, still, throwing up. What's this going to do to your family? You know what I mean? And, kids often will model their parents. How do you want to see them, uh, uh, being controlled by your triggers, things like that. And that, you start playing that movie, and the answer to, do I really want to do this? It will start to change, right? And it's, you want to, in a way, associate some level of disgust to it. Am I right? That's what we're doing here. We're changing that movie. We'll go through, all right, how do you know when it's time? It's a certain time of your day. Is it when you get stressed? Is it, when the house is empty or you have a certain food in the fridge, whatever that is. All right, let's look at those triggers and let's reprogram them. And all right, feel that trigger come up. What are you going to do new now? You know what I mean? We'll run through that several times so that we get that new response programmed in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
But
I mean, my, m- and it's kind of interesting because You could have told me 50 million times while I was bulimic, where do you want to be in 20 years? Do you want to still keep doing this? And I'm just gonna tell you, like, I'm sorry. This is my friend right now. I'm keeping it until I'm ready to stop.
Yeah.
Um, what was the beauty of my when I did finally 15 years ago stop was being able to have time with my family. So that positiveness, I mean, the people around me, funny enough, I didn't care because it's almost like what did my one guy say? One of my psychiatrists said, it's a slow suicide. And people who are
Hmm.
suicidal, quite often, they don't give, excuse my language, shit about people around them and what it's going to hurt them or how it's going to hurt them. They don't care because it's not that they don't care. It's because they can't envision it. They don't want to. And the pain is internalized so deeply that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. It,
first
Go
six
ahead.
months that I was without bulimia, it was then, not my envisioning the future, but it was then in that present moment thinking, wow, I could sit down and have a meal and not try and find a bathroom afterwards. I was like, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's in that moment. So I'm just speaking to my side of the story, and probably a lot of the people listening would see it my way too. What would you do with someone who, even if you try and rewrite that they don't want to rewrite the end of that movie right now? They're not ready to. And quite often we're not until we're ready to. And so where do you find that readiness?
Right.
Does that
Yeah.
make sense? Like,
Um,
I know it sounds
oh
weird.
yeah, totally, totally. Yeah. No, it's all right, there's a couple parts to that. It's number one, we talked before about, those emotional scars and things like that.
Mhm.
They're so often present between, or behind this stuff. Until you deal with those, you could be, bulimia or an addiction or something like that, and it'll pop back up in another way because there's still a need to mask that pain. So we got to go in and deal with that first. I have processes I use to deal with that. We reprocess the memories that, scarred you, things like that. We don't, rewrite them, but we take the emotional sting out of them, get your subconscious to, see them differently. This is no longer a threat. This is, that kind of thing. Um,
Like that.
Once you deal with that, get that out of the way, then you're ready to do the change work. Now you have to want it. It's a lot of time, I've been suicidal, in my younger years. I know exactly what you're talking about, that feeling of not caring, and it's not that you don't care. I would say you're disconnected from it just because your nervous system is so overwhelmed. It's kind of like you just got done running a marathon and, you don't have any energy left. It's anytime you're fighting that kind of a battle inside, you're going to be exhausted, and you're just not, you're not going to be present with, um, other people, what you want out of life, things like that, just because you're in survival mode, right? We fix that first. We bring down the fight or flight, the negative emotions. I have a process I use called timeline therapy. Your timeline is just how your subconscious processes time. So there was a time before you knew what anger was. You had your very first incident of that, sadness, guilt, things like that. We can go back before you experience those emotions and kind of clear them from your nervous system. Really powerful process, but we deal with all the garbage first. And then, like I told you a little while ago, we envision, all right, what's this going to look like? 10, 20 years. We're doing all this under hypnosis. And we're reprogramming your feelings towards it. So I get you to associate, again, some level of disgust to it. And we go really deep. It's how's this going to affect you? How's this going to affect kids or, or whoever you care about? A lot of times we'll do more for other people than will for ourselves. But we figure out what that is for you, and we help you get leverage on yourself. And so when you want to change, which is mandatory, you have to want it. Then you're ready to, we start by, changing those mental movies in your head. There are things that trigger you in order to know, all right, it's time to binge and purge now. What are those? And we'll reprogram your responses to them. It's a long process. It's Again, it's one of the few that I've, usually my stuff, I'm not making zero guarantees here. Everybody's different, but usually my stuff is one and done. You know what I mean? We work on it once and, it's gone. I've had bulimics come back for 3, 4 sessions. It's a tough one to wipe out. I understand that. Um, but again, I can't make you want to. We have to find that in you. We usually can, but it's just getting you clear with that mental movie of what is my, overall goal here? What's my life going to be like? And we got to find that leverage within you, and it's going to be different for everybody.
I love that. One thing I did learn in my recovery was what to stay away from. So it was
Yes.
weird because one lady actually last week she said that I'm lucky because I don't have the triggers anymore. Like
Hmm.
there's a lot of stuff that's gone on in my life recently that could easily have triggered when I was bulimic to go back to it.
Hmm.
But in the first 6 months, it wasn't like that. And
Right.
so I was doing a job for someone and I was typing and I hated it. So I wanted my food there as a comfort for doing something I like to do, which was eating while the
Yeah.
job. And I went, oh my goodness. And I was very acutely aware that this is going to trigger it. So I quit.
Yeah.
And I know
Yes.
that sounds it's not like I'm sorry. Yeah, the money's there, you need to do it. But the money was less important than my mental health and not going back to my
Hmm.
bulimia. And I went, okay, so from now on, if you really hate what you're doing, don't do it. Find
Yeah.
someone else
Yeah.
to do it or whatever. There's things we don't like to do, but I'm serious. This
Right.
was just something that stressed me out. It was like, oh my goodness, a lot of work and a lot of frustration, and I could just feel it. I could just feel that thing.
And
So,
that's that internal battle, right? That,
right,
the
like,
energy you're spending battling that takes you away from the resolve, the
uh,
willpower to not do it. You know what I mean? It's weakening you in a way.
yes, because I wanted that
Yeah.
comfort, and bulimia
Yeah.
is not a
Yeah.
comfort, but the what you said, what at the beginning, the eating process is a comfort. The bulimia is the discomfort, and we put
Temporary,
ourselves into it.
temporary comfort.
It's it. It
What,
is.
what I try to do is make you a comfortable person in
Nice.
general, so that way you're much stronger to be able to battle it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
take away those internal battles. So, you can focus on, getting better.
Yeah. So you don't go to the food for comfort because you're already comfortable and you're comfortable in
Right.
yourself to know what's
Right.
there.
Right.
So yeah, it was really, really important. And in the first 6 months, the toughest thing is actually getting to know your emotions because of course you were eating them for all those
Yeah.
years. Me, it was 30 years I ate my
Yes.
emotions, right? And then threw them up.
Yeah.
And then you're going, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, I have to deal with this on my own. Like it's like, yeah.
Now I have a couple of cool NLP techniques if you'd like me to share.
Absolutely.
It's
Please do.
okay. So all right. Usually this will get triggered by some type of a thought, right, coming up, right? And the way we deal with that is I want you, all right, think about whatever trigger comes up for you. How do you know when it's time to start? And then think about this. Everything that every one of those processes, it's either a picture, a sound, or a feeling, right? Those are called in geek speak, it's called our visual, auditory, and kinesthetic modalities, right? So I want you to think about how do you know when you get triggered, when you know it's time to start, what do you get? Do you get a picture, a sound, or a feeling? Now, about 80% of us are going to run pictures, so I'll run with that, but just, translate for yourself. If it's a picture, all right, where is it? To the right, to the left, above you, below you? How big is it? How far away? Is it in black and white? Is it flat or 3D? Take a second to tune into how you do that process, right? And then take that picture and however big it is, I want you to shrink it down, just like a window on your computer. Make it the size of a postage stamp, right? And notice what that does to the feeling. You can also dump a bucket of white paint on it. Most people usually get, a soothing feeling from that. We can take it and push it way out on the horizon, just make a little dot out there so it can't impact you at all, right? Most people get a huge sense of relief from that. Now, the compulsion, that feeling that you get that craving, right? I teach this process for stress, but it'll work for just about anything. All right, notice where in your body you're feeling that. Get into the experience as much as you can. You're getting triggered. You feel like, all right, it's time to, go purge or whatnot. Notice where in your body you feel that. Now, if you're not driving, close your eyes. It'll intensify the experience. But in your mind's eye, if that feeling had a color, what color would it be? First impression.
Hmm.
Now, is there more than one color?
Hmm.
Just notice, and whatever comes up for you is perfect. But notice those feelings, those colors, if they had a shape, what shape would they be? Again, first impression. All right, now notice those colors, that shape. If they were moving, what direction would they be turning in? Right? If it's hard to tell, try turning one way than the other to see what feels more natural. And then try turning the opposite way and see what that does to the feeling. Most people just got their mind blown at this moment. You feel an internal shift. Now, find the direction that feels best for you. Maybe feels more peaceful or more empowering, whatever that is. And you can spin it up in that new direction if you like, whatever feels best for you, while you drain all that color right out of it. Just make it totally transparent in there.
Oh,
And
interesting.
then fill it back up with whatever color you like. Some people like gold or pink, green or blue, whatever feels best for you. Just take it and run with it. Now, spinning that feeling, that new color, try adding sparkle to it. Watch it start to swirl throughout like a candy cane or one of those poles in front of a barber shop. What we've just done is taught your subconscious. We took a physical process, right? And we taught your subconscious how to undo it and how to, reprogram it. Your subconscious controls everything in your body that you don't have to think about: your breathing, heartbeat, body temperature, how much insulin you crave after a meal, and also those cravings, that pit in your stomach when you're stressed. You know what I mean? It's in control of it all. So again, it's like a computer. It works through programming. So what we do is we give those programs a visual component. And once we do that, I had you identify the color, the shape, the spin, all that. Once we do that, now we can go in and play with it and turn it into what we want. That is the basis of what I do. That's NLP right there. But simple stuff, but it very, very powerful.
I love it. That was very, very interesting. Yeah, I like that. I actually did a little bit of visualization because when I get stressed, it's knots in my stomach. I sort of
Hmm.
read the shape of a heart and
Hmm.
spinning. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so I envisioned it swaying, turning white
Hmm.
with green and yellow sparkles, green being for mint,
Oh, nice.
calming mint.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, I like that. Very cool.
Yeah. So I went through
Everybody's
it in my
different.
own head. So now when I get
Yeah.
stressed, now I know that I can have this nice little flowing bubble of like clouds swaying back and forth that has silver and green sparkles in it and reminds me of mint. There you go.
Yep. Feel better?
It actually does, really. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
stressed right now, but the thought of when I do get knots in my stomach, and sometimes I don't even
Yeah.
know why. Like
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
big thing is when
Yeah.
you cannot and apparently it's a thing. Like people will feel
Oh,
anxiety
yeah.
without even knowing what they're anxious about. There's nothing
It,
that's
it's that,
concrete.
yeah, it's that 95% behind the wheel, right?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
so much going on. The average human has like 60,000 thoughts a day, something like that. Most of them are, very similar to the ones that you had yesterday and very similar to the ones you'll have tomorrow. You
And
get
they
the
said
wrong.
that a lot of them are negative, that only a certain little
Oh, yeah.
bit are
Yeah.
positive, which is
Your
horrible. Like, oh my God.
Well, your brain, if you think about it, your brain has what's called a negativity bias, which means it's going to pick out the things that, could hurt you, right?
Mm,
Or the reason for this is our caveman, cavewoman ancestors, they had to pick out that saber-toothed tiger that was, hiding in the bushes. You know what I mean? That's the ones who were chilled out about it didn't live long enough to become our ancestors. Another part of that is, back then, if you lost your tribe, that was almost a certain death sentence for you and your offspring, right? We need our tribes to survive. And so anything that causes a loss of status or us to lose face, In our tribe, it lights up the exact same fear circuits in the brain as when you're facing a life or death situation, because our brain is still running a playbook from back then. It was a life or death situation. So, give yourself some grace. Your brain is wired to do that. Just a lot of times, just knowing that can help. But it's I still catch myself doing the same thing. You'll think something's a catastrophe when really it's no big deal. You know what I mean? It's just that old programming.
Wow. Well, this was absolutely wonderful. Really, really appreciate everything that you've shared today. I would just love for my listeners to know where to find you now, Matt.
Oh, sure. You can go to my website. It's Matt Johnson NLP. That's MattJohnsson NLP for neurolinguistic programming .com. And I have a free course called NLP Mind Magic where we'll do the unspinning. I use it for fear, but you can use it for just about emotion, negative emotions, limiting beliefs, procrastination, imposter syndrome. It's basically a top 10 of my most requested exercises, but you can get that for free. And if you want to talk to me further, there's a link to do that.
Beautiful. That's absolutely wonderful. I really appreciate this. As I was telling you before, I did study a bit of the NLP and then hypnosis. I really do believe that they're wonderful. And
Life changing.
I like that having experts on it is even more fun. But the nice thing, having studied it, I understand what you're talking about. So I have an understanding of just how powerful it is. So again, thank you very much for sharing today. Really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Take care. Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to visit me at bleepbulimia.com.